Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar session today. My name is Sandra, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator at TorontoJobs.ca. And joining me is Sabrina. She is an employment consultant from ACCESS Employment. And once again, we're very happy to be partnering with them to host this webinar for everyone. I know that our database and our followers really appreciate all the tips and tricks and information that we get from these webinar sessions. So we're really happy that we're back with them again. Just a couple of things before we start. I don't want to take up too much time because I know that we have a lot of information to get through. We are going to be taking questions at the end of the session. Probably about maybe the last 10 to 5 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can post them into the chat. There's a little box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It's just named chat, and if you can post your questions in there, that would be great. If we don't get to all the questions, we will be providing contact information for you to be able to follow up after the session as well. Another thing is that ACCESS doesn't give out their presentations, but we are recording the session. So we will have that available after if you would like a recording of the session as well, just to go through any information. I think that's about it. I'll pass it over to Sabrina, and I'll come back at the end just to help moderate the question and answer period. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. Again, my name is Sabrina Sorochin, employment consultant with ACCESS ACCESS Employment Services. I'm from the Newmarket location, and I'm happy to be here to discuss second career and help provide you with some valuable information if you're interested in retraining or changing your occupation and your career. We've already covered technology and logistics. Please do a double check to make sure you're in listen only mode and you have that flash through your microphone. And again, we'll be taking your question and answers at the end of today's session. So just to discuss a little bit about ACCESS Employment, our vision is to have a fully inclusive labor force that reflects the diversity, skills, and experience of Canada's population. And our mission is to assist job seekers from diverse backgrounds who are facing barriers to employment to integrate into the Canadian job market. We achieve this by providing employment services, linking employers to skilled people, and building strong networks in collaboration with community partners. For those of you who may not have been to our website, I encourage you to visit accessemployment.ca to learn about all of the different programs that we offer. We do receive funding from multiple levels of government, so municipal, federal, provincial, as well as United Way and sponsors as well. So we offer a variety of programs. The program that I am from is the Employment Services Program funded by Employment Ontario and the Ministry of Labour, Training and Skills Development, or Ministry of MLTSD. So we are funded by the provincial government, and the second career program that we're discussing today is also funded through the federal government. So my program, or the program that I'm from, is here to support all job seekers with their employment or training goals. Second career is one of the elements of service that we provide our clients. We also have bridging programs that we offer newcomers to help them with their integration and transition into the labor market. So you might be interested in going on to our website to view the different programs. Collectively, we have served 39,000 job seekers annually. 98% of job seekers would recommend our programs and services to others. So we're very proud to have that feedback from our clients. And 83% of job seekers did find employment or achieve training objectives. So we're also very proud of that conversion as well. So for today's webinar, I'm going to discuss 3 key questions. So what is second career? Do I qualify? And how do I get started? Those are the 3 key components of today's session. So the objective of second career is to support laid off, unemployed individuals who require skills training to assist them to find employment in occupations with demonstrated labor market prospects within Ontario. And the intention of second career is to return individuals to employment by the most cost-effective path. So it provides financial assistance based on individual need to help people with some of the costs associated with requiring that training. Now, in some cases, as we go through today, you'll learn that there may be instances where job seekers are required to contribute to some of the funding for second career, and we'll talk about that more later. So we're looking at skills or occupational training that supports people who have been laid off. Laid off is going to be a key element for the eligibility criteria for second career. And we're looking at skills training that has occupations with good employment prospects. The program must lead to a certificate or a diploma, and maximum funding is a cap of $28,000, which will go towards covering your tuition, textbook costs, any other associated costs, and also possibly to supplement your living allowance as well. Now, for skills training, the training that is allowed under second career is NOC skills level, so National Occupation Skills Level, B and C, with good employment prospects in Ontario. Average or fair can be also considered. And I'll talk to you in a little bit. I'm going to send you or show you a website for the National Occupation Classification Code so you can learn how you identify if the occupation you're interested in being retrained in falls within that guideline. But first, level B occupations usually require college or university education or apprenticeship training, and level C occupations usually require secondary school or occupational training. So I'm just going to minimize my presentation for a moment. This is the National Occupation Classification website. So I will send this link in the chat for you to access. And so on this website, you can search your job title. So just say if you wanted to go in for training, let me just think of one. Administrative assistant. And you can see that there's 3 options that come up. So I'm going to select just the standard administrative assistant rather than the legal or medical avenue for this purpose. And you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a skill level that's listed, and it's B. So again, it requires college education, specialized training, or apprenticeship training. So hypothetically, if I wanted to be retrained as an administrative assistant, I know that this occupation would meet that requirement under the second career guideline because it is a NOC level B. So B or C is what you would want to be looking for when you're searching on the National Occupational Code website. It also gives an overview of duties required for that role. Again, employment requirements. So some valuable information here. So this is one of the websites, one of the resources or tools that your employment consultant will provide you to help you identify what occupations would fall under the guideline for second career. So then what we want to do, because I mentioned that we are hoping that the occupation has a good outlook for employability. So I'm going to take this number 1241, or you can just type in the title. And 1241 populates, and the closest major city would be Toronto, Ontario. Let me just let it populate and I'll select it here. And I'm going to select search. So this is from the Job Bank website. It's a trend analysis link. And again, it's going to echo some of the same information from the NOC code. It's going to have the requirement for education as a college or apprenticeship level of education. But the key thing that we want to look at here on the right-hand side is the prospects is fair. So for anyone who wants to be retrained as an administrative assistant in the Toronto area, the outlook is fair. And I can see there's 325 jobs that are advertised near Toronto. So later on, I'm going to talk about some of the requirements to submit for your application for second career. This is one of the resources or tools that you'll want to reference is the Job Bank Trend Analysis to look at labor market information, to collect data to support your application for training. And usually we need to have at least 5 job applications to support that you would be able to find employment in your field, in your local area. So you could click view available jobs, select Toronto, Ontario, and you could save or print to PDF some of these positions. But for second career, the government would be looking for you to have job postings to support training that are full-time sustainable employment. So full-time positions, not contract, not part-time, and not casual. So you want to have 5 postings, usually for a good outlook for employability to support your application. If it's fair, so in this case, administrative assistant is fair, I would probably ask my client to then submit more. For example, 10 postings to support that there's full-time sustainable employment that is currently available in the market. So these are some resources, again, that would be provided to you, but I will put this in the chat as well. So that's the trend analysis. And then another resource that we look at sometimes is this link as well, Ontario Job Futures. So I will also submit that link in the chat. So I mentioned that we're looking at programs that lead to a certificate or a diploma. So training cannot exceed more than 52 weeks in length. This is a change that was made prior. Second career was supporting programs of up to 2 years in length. So the government has made this change. So 1 year maximum of training, with the exception of anyone that requires literacy basic skills or academic upgrading. Maybe language upgrading. So maybe you need to take like an ESL course, things like that. That can be considered. So you can do an additional of 1 year of upgrading, of LBS upgrading. So if you don't have the prerequisites to get into the program of your choice, for example, you might be wanting to take a PSW certificate, but you need to have your college level English, you might need to have a college level biology course, maybe you need to upgrade and get those credits in order to get admitted into the program, then in that case we could put forth a rationale to support 1 year of academic upgrading to get you those prerequisites. Correspondence online distance education is also considered for second career. However, right now, because of the pandemic, the preferred mode of learning would be online, because obviously there's a concern for people's health and safety because of the pandemic to attend on campus. If you submit an application that is for an on-campus program, we would have the expectation that the school would provide a letter outlining what measures they are taking to protect your health and safety because of the pandemic. So it still can be put forth for consideration, but the preference right now is for online. For part-time training, the cost of tuition and other instructional costs may be provided. However, basic living allowance and other supports will not. So if you only want to study on a part-time basis, you won't get funding for living allowance. Just to be aware of that. So do you qualify? I'm going to talk in detail about the eligibility, suitability, and financial need for second career. It's a 3-stage qualifying process. So essentially, if you meet the baseline requirements, you move on to the next stage for second career. So the baseline requirement, first we're going to look at eligibility. So for second career proper, and there's a few different streams of second career proper, or second career normal stream, the eligibility is for you to be laid off on or after January 1st, 2005. So there is reach back for people who have faced a layoff to 2005. There are some guidelines around that, however, but we can reach back to 2005, are unemployed, Ontario resident, Canadian citizen or permanent resident, or an approved convention refugee or refugee claimant. So training, again, has to be ideally in good labor prospects for you to pursue a second career. And it makes sense because the government, realistically, they're not going to want to invest in you if you're going to pursue a training that is poor for employability in the future, because that's going to probably not lead to sustainable employment or better your situation. So that's why we really look at what labor market is saying about the career of choice that you would like to transition into. So this would be the baseline eligibility criteria. Additional considerations would be for people who've been laid off or received a recall to work notice. Early retirement would apply to individuals who were laid off and were required to take an early retirement package due to a business closure. So from June 2008 onward, we can look at people in that situation who were required to take an early retirement. If you quit or were fired from an interim job after being laid off from a NOC-D occupation, that also can be considered. If you were employed seasonally, so just say you have employment maybe in the summer months doing landscape construction as an example, you're laid off in the winter months, then we might be able to look at second career for you as an option, provided that pursuing the training will decrease your layoff period or likelihood that you'd be laid off in the off season. If it would provide skills that would lead to year-round employment, or skills that would be necessary to find alternate work in the off season. So maybe you want to be trained in heavy equipment operation or something like that for the winter months. Preventing job loss where the seasonal job will change and the employee will need new skills. The employer cannot provide skills training would occur during the period of unemployment. So these are all things that we would take into consideration outside of the normal eligibility guidelines for second career. So for ineligibility, if you have been restricted from receiving assistance under the OSAP program, so Ontario Student Application Program, if you fail to provide all required information and documents relating to OSAP or provided incorrect information relating to OSAP or other student financial assistance offered by Canada or a province or territory, you would be ineligible. If you fail to promptly update information that you previously provided to the ministry, and individuals who begin skills training before being approved by the ministry would be ineligible. So this is a very, very important point that I would like to make here. You will, if you submit an application for second career to the ministry and are pending a decision about your application, and you decide to start training before receiving that approval, you would be ineligible for second career. The ministry will revoke your ability to apply for second career. They will decline your application. So it's happened before, sadly, that we've had clients that have been very excited and enthusiastic about the prospect of training, but impatient to wait for that response. And unfortunately, it has had dire consequences. So for anyone here that is interested in second career, please make that mental note moving forward. Do not start training prior to receiving written approval, so not verbal, but a signed contract for second career from the government. You can see there's other ineligibility criteria here. So if you've taken a leave of absence or in a work sharing program, if you have completed skills training program in the last 2 years, you're not going to be eligible for second career. And if you're intending to return to school in the upcoming academic year, so this would apply to, for example, maybe a student who is on summer break and is returning for a fall semester, they're not eligible for second career because they're already started their program. They wouldn't have been considered to have made the transition from school to work. So they would have to be out of training for that, 2-year period and have had continuous employment for a period of time. So people in that situation would not be eligible for second career funding. So potentially eligible for those who cannot pursue employment in an occupation for which they were trained due to medical reasons. So in some circumstances, even if someone has not faced a layoff, but if they have a doctor's note to support that they cannot return to their previous employment because of a medical reason, they could be eligible for second career. We do need that medical note from a doctor to support that and to recommend that training would be beneficial. This is one of the other streams of second career application that we'll talk about. If you've been laid off from the manufacturing sector job on or after January 1st, 2019, even if you have completed training in the last 2 years, you may be eligible for second career. So I'll talk about the manufacturing initiative later on in this presentation. So once we've determined your employment consultant and you have determined that, yes, you are eligible for training, then we have to look at, well, are you suitable for training? Are you a good candidate for training from the government? Excuse me. So for that, we turn to the following criteria: how active you've been on your job search, the duration of unemployment, your educational attainment, work history, labor market prospects. So that's that NOC website that I mentioned before, and the Job Bank website, type of skills training, and occupational skills training. So we break this down into a matrix. You can see on the screen here, there's a chart. The left-hand side of the chart has all that criteria I just listed. And the top bar of the chart has a weighting. So program suitability high, medium, or low. And then there's criteria in the middle. So we're going to break this down step by step for you to make it easy. So active job search, what does that mean? An active job search, essentially, the longer you have been conducting your job search, you would be awarded the maximum points in that category, which would be 3. So that's greater than 26 weeks of active job search. And if you have less than 13 weeks, you would be awarded 1 point, and in between 2 points. However, to prove that you have been actively searching for employment, you must provide supporting documentation, so evidence of your job search, which ideally we look for 3 to 5 job search activities per day. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have applied to 3 to 5 jobs specifically. Job search activity is a broad spectrum. So we would look at, yes, jobs that you've applied for, applications you've submitted, but we also consider networking and cold calling as a job search activity. If you've reached out to someone on LinkedIn, that can go on your list, who you spoke to, who you reached out to. If you attended the second career webinar like you're attending today, this could go down on your job search log as an activity that you did. If you attended a guest speaker event through an employment service provider such as ACCESS or a pre-employment program, if you received assistance creating your resume or a cover letter or doing a mock interview or doing an informational interview with a prospective employer, all of these things are considered as part of your job search. So the takeaway here for you would be to start tracking and documenting what your job search efforts are each day, to start compiling the evidence that you have been looking. And the purpose would be to prove to the ministry that you have given it an honest effort to find employment in your field or a similar field, have been unsuccessful, and therefore would benefit from retraining through the second career program. So this is a very important element, and for any one of you, and I suspect a fair amount probably would be in receipt of employment insurance benefit, because most people who have been laid off do go on EI. Just keep in mind also that this is a requirement for employment insurance benefits as well, that you're actively seeking employment and to keep a job search log. So if they ever audit your file, they will request that evidence as well. So it's good to start tracking that if you haven't. So for duration of unemployment, this we turn to your record of employment. So we do need you to submit a copy of your record of employment that supports that you faced a layoff. So code A would be indicated on that record of employment. If you don't have it, then you're going to probably create a My Service Canada account or log into one if you already have it. And your employer would have likely submitted it directly to Service Canada, and you can obtain a copy there. So we look at the record of employment and we calculate the length of unemployment based on your last day worked. So similarly to the length of job search, the longer you have been unemployed, the greater the points you would be awarded. You'd be awarded 3 points, less than 13 weeks, 1 point, and in between 2 points. So your record of employment is also another important piece that we need you to prepare and get and submit. And we need this for the suitability assessment. So you need to have that when you have that appointment with the employment consultant. So then we look at educational attainment. So this is your level of education that you have. So the higher educated you are, so as an example, you've completed a post-secondary program or an apprenticeship perhaps, you would be awarded the least amount of points, so 1 point. And on the flip side, the less education you have, the more points you're awarded, so high school completion or less, 3. Or if your foreign post-secondary diploma is not recognized in Ontario, you could be awarded 3 points. But it's important to note here, you have to have gone through a formal credential assessment to prove that your diploma is not recognized in Ontario. So you can't just simply say, my degree or my high school education from my home country is not recognized. You have to have supporting documentation. So one thing I'll just show you that we can provide you a link for is canalliance.org. Lists a number of organizations that can support with credential assessment and evaluations. So I will include that in the chat for you. Excuse me. And then if you have, I apologize, high school or some post-secondary and apprenticeship training, you would get 2 points in that category. Then we look at work history, and that's the time that you've worked in the same occupation. So not the same employer, but the same occupation. So the longer you've worked in the same occupation, the more points you receive. So 3 points, 1 and then 2. So 1 point for less than 3 years and in between 2 points. And now we look at labor market prospects. So is the job that you want to be retrained for, is it a NOC B or C? Does it require a credential or a license? So this doesn't mean, will I receive a diploma? No, it means a credential or license. So is there a governing body that oversees that occupation? An example would be nursing, early childhood educator, a teacher, but even though teacher would be too long of training for second career purposes, but you get what I'm saying. So a licensing body that would oversee that occupation. You would get 3 points, and if there's no credential or license needed, 2 points in that category. And then we look at types of skills training. So if academic upgrading is required to qualify for the occupational training, so you need to get your prerequisites to get admitted into the program, you would be awarded 2 points. Or if you need language training to qualify, 2 points. And then if the program that you're doing leads to the certificate or diploma, you would be awarded 3 points in that category. And I just thought I would also mention here, a popular occupation used to be real estate license, for example, someone to be retrained so they can be a realtor. That is no longer eligible under second career training because that training, the structure of the training has changed. It changed from being a structured course, and it was online or on campus with an official start and end date. And they've made it asynchronous with no official start and end date. So you can take the program and complete it as quickly or as slowly as you would like. And for second career, it's important to note that the ministry also has a guideline that training has to have an official start and end date, has to have an hour requirement for training. So there are guidelines there as well. So you need to talk to your employment consultant around the training that you want to pursue to make sure it meets criteria. There's also, actually, I'll talk about that in just a moment. So then we look at occupational skills training. So this would be your experience. So does your employment, if it's a NOC B or C category and there's limited opportunities for sustainable employment, you would receive 2 points. If your experience was a NOC D, so NOC D would require on-the-job training or less than high school, you would be awarded 3 points. But we also look at the labor market research at your current occupation to see what the projections are for employability as well. So it's not just about what training do I want to pursue, is it going to have a good outlook for employment, but it's also looking at my current occupation is, just say cashier. The outlook for employment is poor. Okay, there's a strong rationale there. What I'm currently doing has limited job opportunities. What I want to be trained in has good opportunities for employment. Likely, this will be a good investment. If my occupation that I'm in has a high likelihood of employment, so a good outlook for employment, then that might impact whether or not the ministry would support your application. Because do you need training? If there's ample jobs available, if your industry is on the rise, that may or may not impact whether or not you would be deemed a suitable candidate for second career. And for this assessment, the total amount of points that we look at is 16. So this chart, you have to have a minimum of 16 points to be considered suitable for second career. I want to also state here that even if at the time when you're meeting the employment consultant and you do the suitability assessment, hypothetically, just say you have 14 points, there's still hope is not lost necessarily. The active job search and duration of unemployment categories, these are the only 2 criteria on the assessment where you can earn points. Because just say you were awarded 1 point for how long you've been active in your job search and 1 point for the duration of your unemployment. As time goes on and you get into the 13 to 26 weeks or the more than 26 weeks category, you will earn another point in both categories for program suitability. So for your active job search and your duration of unemployment. So today, you may not have sufficient points. You may not be suitable today for second career, but keep that relationship going with your employment consultant. Keep tracking and documenting your job search and compiling the evidence. And as time goes on, revisit the suitability matrix and see if your eligibility changes, because it very well could, and it has for clients we've served. So just wanted to make you aware of that as well. Next, we look at financial assessment. So we deemed your eligibility, how we identify if you're suitable. Now financial assessment comes into play. So once you are suitable and eligible for second career, we'll have a form that you would fill out, and you would submit that as part of your application. Now the form looks at your household income, your basic living expenses, the skills training costs, and any other associated costs. If you need accommodations due to a disability, maybe some software or equipment to help you with your training, anything like that, that could be built into the financial assessment to see if we could cover those costs. And then there may also, again, be that participant contribution. So Second Career will provide financial support for your tuition. If you have to relocate for training because you can't train online, or the training that you want to pursue is not local, then there could be costs covered for relocation, costs for transportation, for placement or two-year program, YRT pass, things like that can all be factored in with the financial assessment. What's not included on the financial assessment is income from Ontario Works, or ODSP, HST or GST rebates, Universal Child Care Benefit, Ontario Child Benefit, so on and so forth. So you can see there's more in the list. Child support payments are not considered for the financial application. However, spousal support is included. So if you have to pay spousal support or in receipt of spousal support, that would be factored into the assessment. Now we're going to talk about the fast track stream. So the fast track stream, we're going to look at, it's a modified, accelerated process in comparison to Second Career Normal or Second Career Proper stream. So this was the government's response to the pandemic, and it's for people who have worked in occupations that have been hard hit from the pandemic. So you have to have been laid off on or after March 1st, 2020, have high school education or less, or been laid off from an occupation requiring no more than high school education and job-specific training. So that's that NOC-D category. Laid off, again, from an industry hard hit from the pandemic and want to train for an in-demand career in a local community or provincial priority area. And you're probably going to say, Sabrina, please enlighten me. What is the sector that's hard hit from the pandemic? How do I know if the career I want to train for is in a high priority area? So, number one, sectors hardest hit from the pandemic, and your employment consultant will review this with you, but I'll list a few. So accommodation and food services, business building and other support services, transportation and warehousing, construction trade, wholesale and resale trade was affected, manufacturing, forestry, fishing, mining, oil and gas. So all of these types of things we would look at from as being an industry hard hit from the pandemic. Even if you have post-secondary education, as long as you were laid off from an occupation that required less than high school, you could still meet the eligibility criteria for the fast track stream. So all of these bullet points here have to have check marks beside them for eligibility. So for an in-demand career in a local provincial priority area, there's three main ones that we look at: information and communications technology, life sciences, and advanced manufacturing. And your employment consultant will have a list. Unfortunately, I don't have it handy right now, but we'll have a list of a number of NOC codes or industries that would fall within these three categories. So they would go through the list with you and identify whether or not the occupation that you want to train for is on that list. So provided that the occupation is on that list, it's kind of been pre-selected or pre-approved for the fast track stream, and you've been laid off from an industry hard hit for the pandemic, from an occupation that required less than high school, and laid off on or after March 1st, the fast track stream can be for you. And let me just go back for 1 minute. So what that means is the application is accelerated, so we don't have to do the suitability matrix. You don't need the 16 points for this stream. You still have to prove that you've been actively seeking employment and have not been successful in obtaining employment. So you still do need to have a job search log for your application, but the suitability matrix does not apply. Then we look at the second career manufacturing initiative. So that is for anyone who's laid off from the manufacturing industry from on or after January 1st, 2019. And it's for the duration of unemployment. So just like with the fast track initiative, the duration of unemployment, the suitability matrix is not required. And for this one, active job search is not required, but it is required for the fast track stream. So suitability matrix isn't needed for either of these two streams, but active job search is needed for the other. So I don't want to confuse you there. And then even if you have completed training in the last 2 years, you still can be eligible for second career under this initiative. Whereas second career proper or fast track, you can't have completed training in the last 2 years. So what do you do next? So we're going to review next steps for you. So you have to do your research. You have to start documenting and tracking your job search. And I'm going to talk to you in greater detail about your responsibilities versus the employment consultant's responsibilities. So first things first, if you're not connected with an employment consultant, you want to get connected with an employment consultant from a program like ours that is funded by Employment Ontario and is equipped and approved to review second career applications. So they administer the second career program on behalf of the government. I will post at the end of our webinar a list of our locations at ACCES, so you can contact the one that's closest to you. You want to discuss, obviously, your situation, your training goal. If you're not sure what training you want to do, we do have support to help you with career exploration and looking into what that might look like for you in terms of next steps. So again, that's another conversation you would have with your employment consultant. And you would want to conduct your labor market research and your training research. So the NOC classification website, labor market research through Ontario Job Futures or through the Job Bank, which I showed you, and then exploring training. So there's the Ontario College Application Service that you can go and look at training for publicly funded colleges. If you decide that you want to pursue training through a private career college, that's okay. And in fact, part of your application, you actually have to provide 3 training options for you, where you compare the tuition cost for 3 institutions. You have to have start and end dates for both, for all 3, the cost of textbooks, etc. So you have to do this as part of your research. And then for part of that research, you have to have a minimum of 1 publicly funded school and 1 private career college. So you can submit your research for 2 private career colleges and 1 publicly funded or the reverse, but there has to be at least 1 of each, publicly funded or private career. But the private career college must be a registered private career college in Ontario. And this website link that I will submit in the chat, you can actually search to find out if a private career college is registered in Ontario. So very important that you provide that information because if it's not deemed, if it's not registered, then the ministry won't accept it as a viable training option for you. So for private career colleges, please go and look at that link as well. So I'm sure this is all clear as mud. I know I'm going through it pretty quickly and it's a lot of information to absorb. So this is just hopefully the first step of your process with second career. So once you do your labor market, you've decided on what school you want to proceed, obviously we're going to start your application. I've already said everything here on the screen. For your responsibilities, it is actually your responsibility to fill out the application form. So your employment consultant is not going to do all the legwork for you. However, we are here to support you through the process. So Your responsibilities are to gather the documents, conduct that research piece, right? Your labor market, your colleges, the breakdown of costs, the acceptance letter of the school of your choice, have your job search log ready to go, and then provide all that information to your employment consultant. Our responsibility is to assess your eligibility and suitability for the program based on the criteria that is outlined by the government to us. So we are the administrators. They are the ones that create the criteria. And we are here to support the application process. And I'm going to be completely transparent. It is a very cumbersome process. There's a lot of things that you have to compile, especially for the second career proper stream. But it's really beneficial to keep open communication with your employment consultant so we can support and guide you accordingly. Just as an example, just today even, I had to reach out to the school on behalf of one of my second career clients because they weren't getting the information they needed from the school. So she gave it her honest effort to get the information with her consent. I reached out to the school and was able to make a little more headway. So sometimes we need to step in and help co-support, and we're willing and able to do that as well. And it helps to really break down the application in pieces so it becomes less of a daunting or overwhelming task. So we can help you sort out what you do in what order and help come up with timelines. So we review your application for completeness, and we even review it with our manager prior to submitting to the ministry. So we have our own processing time as well. And we will follow up with the ministry on your behalf. However, usually the ministry contacts the client to let them know if they're approved or not. We always usually find out from the client that they've been approved. So you can expect that the ministry will follow up with you. Typical processing time is 6 to 8 weeks, and that's just 6 to 8 weeks from the start date for the ministry. So as a best practice, we say 8 to 10 weeks because we need at least a week or two, in all fairness, to coordinate time to review the application, have that cushioning if we need clarity or additional information for your application. In some cases, like I had a client who applied for personal support worker, they had to get additional information for their application. They had to get, a clear health record check, a full immunization report. So had to update their immunization, a clean criminal record check, because these things are required for placement. They're required to graduate. They're required to work in the field. So there's always going to be other things that might come up depending on what training or occupation you're pursuing. So we need to have that cushioning. So be aware of that. Sometimes people come to us 3 weeks before a start date and say, well, please, I want to apply. And it's just not realistic. So you have to understand that we have these guidelines we adhere to and follow, but we're here to guide you as best as we can. Second Career is one of many programs. There's also OSAP that has a combination of grants, bursaries, and loans that might help you fund your education. And really, the purpose of Second Career is to provide you with this opportunity to change your career. It's a fantastic opportunity, but we do really have to have an honest conversation with you and look at want versus need. So Second Career is very much created in a way, and rightfully so, that it is about need versus want. So you might want to pursue training, but is there a demonstrated need? Is there a decline in your industry? Is there going to be, employment opportunities and growth in the industry that you want to pursue training in, and the occupation you want to pursue training in? So we have to look at the full picture and really come up with a good rationale to support why you would benefit from the training and would be a viable, good candidate to pursue Second Career. But again, your employment consultant is here to guide and support you. So please reach out to us. We're happy to help in any way that we can. So now I'm going to turn it over and we'll do some brief Q&A, and then I can show you our websites and our locations and how you can contact us.
Hi there, Sabrina. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear
Yes,
me?
I can. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we do actually have a lot of questions. So I'm just sort of going to jump right into it, and I'll start at the top here and then try to get through as many as we can. And again, if we don't answer your question, or if Sabrina doesn't answer your question, you can contact her directly after. The first question here is there any type of limitation age related to having access to the program?
No.
Can one apply for second career training again?
Possibly, yeah. We would have to look at how long it's been since you received training. So that might be an option. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to scroll through the chat here. Where do these questions go here? Is layoff the same as if you were let go because of downsizing?
Yes, so the code that should be on your record of employment would be A. Employers will usually put A because of downsizing, even business closure. Usually they would put an A, layoff. So all of that kind of falls under the A category.
Another question is mortgage broker license, electrician license, IT certification fees covered in second career?
Okay, you said a lot of things there.
Because I think when you spoke about the real estate, how that's not under second career, I feel like maybe they're referring to that. Maybe.
They might be. So, with any type of training, like the first thing we have to look at for some of the things that were mentioned is, does it fall in NOC B or C category? If they fall in NOC B or C and labor market is strong, or there's enough postings to support, even for a fair outlook, then we could probably put through a rationale for that training. So we would have to look at each of those occupations individually. I wouldn't know that off the top as whether or not they would be considered. But apprenticeship is also another route for electrician, right? So that would be a discussion with your employment consultant if second career is the proper route, if someone wanted to become an electrician or anything trades related, because the apprenticeship avenue might be the better avenue that could get you in the workplace earning an income and working towards your certification at the same time. So that would be something that would be explored.
Okay. If this isn't covered, are individuals who have used or maxed out their OSAP usage still eligible for funding? If this isn't.
So I'm assuming this person may have received OSAP in the past and is looking to go back to retraining. There has to be at least 2 years between, from when they last attended training. If they defaulted on an OSAP loan, didn't pay it back, are in arrears with that, then that would be an issue. You wouldn't likely qualify to process a second career application. So I would need a little more context around that. It's almost implied that the person is in school, has maxed out their line of credit or their OSAP loan and wanting additional money for free to finish their program. That wouldn't be allowed, right? Like you have to have made the transition from school to work. So if you're a current student and wanting to apply for second career to fund the rest of your education, that wouldn't be able to happen under second career.
Can self-employed apply?
So as of right now, the guidelines around self-employment, no, you have to have been employed, not self-employed. But I know recently someone had seen an article that there were changes coming around self-employed, but we have had nothing communicated from the government to us specifically that has made allowances for being self-employed for second career. But I mean, these guidelines can change too, so check back for more information. But as of right now, no, nothing has been communicated, at least not to me, regarding self-employment.
Okay, and I think this other question is just a follow-up to the layoff one. Is being terminated without cause considered the same as layoff? So I think I just want clarification on
No, it would have to go, we need to look at the record of employment, what code's listed. If sometimes they put a code K, and code K would have a reason put. So sometimes employers might put a code K on a record of employment and then say business closure, right? In that case, we can submit that reasoning to the ministry, and they would likely, I can't guarantee that they would, but usually they would, consider that as part of like the layoff category. Quit, fired, terminated, does not meet the guidelines under second career. So I would have to see the record of employment to see what code was put. So, and unless there's a medical reason why you can't go back to that line of work, that's the only kind of exception. Or if it was considered an interim job that you were let go from, or that employment was severed after you had already faced a layoff, then there might be something like a rationale within there, but you'd have to talk about your specific situation with the employment consultant.
Okay. Is this program applicable to new immigrants?
Yes, it could be, but we do need to have supporting documentation. So your employment consultant could guide you in what that looks like.
Okay. Let me go back here. There's so many questions. Is CPA continuing education courses at colleges can be qualified for second career?
I'd have to look at the NOC code for accountant. So for example, like NOC A is the university level of education. That would not qualify under second career, with the exception of fast track. So I forgot to mention that for the fast track stream is the only stream of second career where a university level of education might be considered. But again, it has to fall within the 1 year, maximum 52 weeks of training. So for the CPA, I would have to look at what NOC code we would be using, because there are some that fall under the A, but there's some that fall under the B or C. So we would have to look at that.
Okay, so, and we actually got a follow-up to that OSAP question from Michelle. She said the last OSAP question was regarding having been to school and transitioned into work, but no additional OSAP would not be available due to reaching OSAP max payout lifetime. So I'm not sure if with her additional comment there, if there's anything else you can add to what you had already said.
I don't know 100%. I think that you still would be eligible, because as long as you don't have, like, you just can't fail to provide the information to the ministry, you still could be considered. But I would have to confirm that. I would have to go back and look at the guidelines and confirm 100%. So I'm not confident in saying yes 100% right now, but I think so.
Okay. If you left your field willingly, the question went away. If you left your field willingly for health-related reasons, do you qualify?
So you have to have a doctor's note that states that you can't go back to your previous line of work due to medical reasons. And then, we would see what we can do for the application, right? So that is a deeper conversation. So if I'm understanding, you probably have quit your job due to medical or health reasons, but we do need that documentation to support from your doctor that you can't return. Your doctor doesn't have to necessarily disclose what your medical condition is, but just that you have a medical condition that does not enable you to return to your previous line of work. And therefore you would benefit from training. So that's something that we can walk you through in terms of documentation and what we would need in the letter.
Someone is asking, does early retirement count?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, if someone had to retire early, then you still might be considered. It's an additional consideration. I would need more information, regarding the situation around the early retirement. So it's definitely worth making an appointment to explore.
Okay. Let's see, where was that other question I had here? If I have a university degree from Ontario already, will my application be turned down?
No, so we go back to that suitability matrix, right? I'm just going to try to see if I can pull up the chart quickly. Um, so what would happen? You still need to have the 16 points. Your educational attainment, you would only be given 1 point in that category. If you meet 16 points on like in total, then you're considered suitable for second career as long as you meet the eligibility criteria of being laid off, um, and having supporting documentation like a record of employment that shows that. So it's not that you would be null and void because you were a university graduate. That wouldn't be.
In 2015, do I still qualify if I got a job after a while?
You might if you had. We can do reach back. I said up to 2005. What we would have to look at is your specific situation and was your job considered an interim job? Um, so what does that look like? So I need more details and information around what you were doing in order to warrant reaching back to your former layoff. So make an appointment with an employment consultant, and they will look at the bigger picture with you and guide you appropriately.
Okay, so I'm so sorry, everyone. I know there are a lot more questions, but we are out of time for today. So Sabrina, if you want to maybe put your contact information into the chat, and for those who didn't have their questions answered, maybe they could reach out to you after.
Yeah, so I put my contact information in the chat at the very top
Okay.
for anyone. I'll actually just copy and paste it back here and put it down again. But our website is accessemployment.ca. I just want to quickly mention for anyone that's job searching, our e-access portal is great. Has a lot of resources available. Resume tips, interview tips, etc. So feel free to go on to our e-access portal. But if you want to make an appointment, you can just scroll to the bottom and see our list of locations here, and you can click on the link. So for example, I'm from Newmarket. If you live close to Newmarket, you can call this number here and make an appointment, or our fancy little, we call it the Vera, our chat bot. You can select Vera, and Vera will help you get registered with one of our sites. So you can just self-guided answer her questions, and then your information will be sent to a location that's closest to you, and someone will contact you to make an appointment. So there's a few ways that you can make an appointment with one of our locations.
Okay, perfect. So, and we also had a lot of questions about whether or not the session is being recorded, and we are recording it, so we are able to send that information, or sorry, the recording as well to those who want to go back and look at the presentation again. But other than that, that is all for today. Thank you everyone so much for participating and for attending the event. We really appreciate it. And thank you again to ACCESS Employment for partnering with us to host this webinar. We always get a lot of really great responses from our followers on Facebook, because we're also on Facebook Live too, and through our database as well. Is there anything else, Sabrina, that you'd like to add just before we leave?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for having me back for this webinar. I'm happy to be here. And as Wayne Gretzky once said, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So, while second career can be a cumbersome process, feel free to let us help you navigate and support you through this, as it really can be an opportunity for many to transition into a career that will offer sustainable employment and be that conduit to help change your life. So we're happy to help you do that. And thank you again so much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice day.
Take care.